Mike. What day is it, Mike? Well, we're 1 week and 1 day away from Thanksgiving. It's Wednesday, November 20th at 7:55 in the morning here in Western Iowa. Let's get after it. There's a lot going on, and here are your watches and your warnings across the country. Starting from the West Coast, we have flood watches up for the Northern California coast into Northern California, and that's going to be heavy snow. Winter storm warnings for the Siskiyous and the Sierra Nevada. Getting into Nevada itself. Is that red flag warnings? It looks like maybe, or blizzard warnings. It's going to be a lot of wind and a lot of snow for the mountains of Northern California, Southern Oregon, and some very heavy rainfall along the coast. So we see flood warnings going into Oregon and those winter storm warnings getting into the Southern Oregon Cascades. Then it's winter storm or winter weather advisories further north in the Cascades, but you get back into Washington State, and we're back to winter storm warnings, and even some blizzard warnings still remain in the Cascades of Washington. Winter weather advisories as you head further to the east into Idaho and Montana, and also into North Dakota and parts of Minnesota. Winter weather advisories and a little bit of a winter storm warning there in North Dakota. Then it's also wind issues for the northern plains with high wind warnings, South Dakota into Nebraska, red flag warnings where I live, along with a wind advisory. So be advised it's going to be windy in the northern plains. Finally, a freeze warning for parts of southeastern New Mexico into West Texas. They are 3 weeks late on their freeze in Lubbock, Texas this morning. Their first freeze of the year is from what I'm told. And it should be October 31st. Here we are 3 weeks later. Crazy. Wind advisories, Louisiana. We've got some fog, Ohio River Valley into Kentucky and Tennessee. Then we get further east and snow concerns as we get into the Appalachians of Kentucky, into West Virginia, up into Pennsylvania, and a chance for some winter weather, also Pennsylvania to New York State. So that's a lot going on. Let's check out our weather spotlight. Sioux City, South Dakota. Wind gusting at 8 a.m. into the 40s and low 50s. Then you get to noon, winds gusting to near 60 in some areas. Then you get to 4 p.m., winds relaxing a little bit, but still gusting upper 40s to low 50s. And then by 8 p.m., things start to relax a little bit. But Sioux City, part 2, there's going to be some blowing snow with that in some areas. And some of it's going to be high enough to reduce visibilities at times. So depending on where you are and when you are, in the Sioux City area, so basically eastern South Dakota into western Minnesota, watch out for some snow and some blowing snow, reducing visibilities, and some of that will be on the ground. All right, here we go with our GFS. So let's crank through this thing. I had a comment yesterday. Someone wants these around 10 minutes. And that's not going to happen. But maybe I can keep them around 12 to 15, maybe. 20 might be a little too long for most. All right, here's our low that brought all the rain from West Texas through the plains, which has now turned to snow, and the low is kind of moving back to the southwest a little bit. So here's our snow in the Dakotas and Minnesota. Here's our big, and I do mean big and strong storm moving into the Pacific Northwest. Heavy rain, Northern California. Heavy snow, Northern California, Southern Oregon. Heavy snow, Washington, and a little bit of shower activity here in the southeast. So let's move forward in time through today. We'll see a low here moving through the Great Lakes. That's what's really going to take over. This low and this low. So this is Thursday, 9Z. So this is 3 a.m. tomorrow morning Central Time. And you can see this low dropping snow from Green Bay through Chicago, now into Indiana, Illinois. You see very heavy rain for Northern California, which is very heavy snow in the highest elevations there. Our low rotating around, and another low forming here in the Northeast. And that gets us to Thursday night. And then as we go through Friday, look at this light snow getting into Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee. Very heavy rain continues into Northern California. A few light rain shower or snow showers moving inland. That's rain down in the Snake River Valley. Heavy rain, snow, and lots of wind for New England. See what happens when I try to go too fast. Maybe. Yeah, this low pinwheeling around in the northeast, this gets us into Friday morning. And then as we get into Friday noon, Friday afternoon, look at this still heavy rain in Northern California. Look at these isobars so close together. This is a very strong low off the coast of Vancouver Island. Rain spreading southward in California, and we see some snow here along the Appalachians and into New England. This is Friday night, midnight. This is Saturday morning. As we get into the weekend, finally our one piece of energy breaks off and moves into the northern Rockies and then into the northern plains with some snow here. Our very strong low in the northeast, bringing lots of wind and a little bit of light snow for New England, light snow in the Dakotas. This gets us to midnight Saturday night as we move into Sunday. It gets a little quieter, but it's going to be cold in the northeast with cool temperatures and a lot of wind. And we see our snow up here in the northern plains, and it's colder in Northern California, so our snow levels are dropping here. And we see some rain for the San Francisco area, and that's moving into the central valleys south of Sacramento. This gets us into Sunday afternoon. A little bit of light snow coming off the Rockies into western Nebraska falling apart. And then we see our cooler air starting to move a little further south. This piece of energy here on the morning of Monday the 25th. We'll see if that goes anywhere. Meanwhile, some rain breaking out Mississippi through Tennessee and Kentucky. And a little bit of light snow for Nebraska back into Colorado as we get into Monday afternoon. That sort of fades out. Our rain in the southeast, very light, kind of quiet Tuesday. But we have another piece of energy moving into California. Heavy rain here, heavy snow here. This gets us into Tuesday around noon Central Time. And we see that snow spreading into the Rockies. It's on the light side, but it stays heavy rain for California. We see some more rain here in the mid-Atlantic. Lake effect snow coming off of Michigan, Huron, Erie, a little bit off of Superior. And then as we move through time here, this is Wednesday at noon, the busiest travel day of the year. Watch out for lake effect snow for parts of Michigan into the eastern Great Lakes. A piece of light snow now for Nebraska into Kansas. And then back into Colorado and to the Great Basin with heavy rain in California. Watch this little bit of light snow move into Iowa. So, I've been talking about maybe a chance of some snow on the ground here for Thanksgiving. It could happen. But again, this is a busy travel time, so be careful. It might cause some traveling problems. And that light snow continues as we get into, this is midnight Wednesday, and then it just starts to fade out in Iowa by Thanksgiving morning. Thanksgiving morning, the heavy rain still happening in parts of California with some snow inland. And then it gets, about a little bit quieter because I'm just going to zoom through this because this storm looks like it's going to be very big. And not only does the GFS have it, but so does the European. And so we see what could be a big snowstorm forming into the northern plains, central plains, and into the upper Midwest. And as we get into the last day of the month and the first day of December, we could see a major snowstorm here. But we'll keep an eye on that as we get closer. Meanwhile, back to today, your 24-hour temperature change. It is much cooler in the northern plains and into the upper Midwest and into the Midwest, and then down into the Southeast, much warmer for the Great Basin and also for the Mid-Atlantic. Surface today shows that snow heavy at times, South Dakota, North Dakota, western Minnesota, and then very light really for parts of Iowa, Wisconsin. Our big storm for the Northwest with rain and snow and heavy at times. Northern California especially, look out. Rain in the southeast possible as well. We're going to be watching the Great Lakes and the West Coast for the rest of the week is going to be our major stories. Anomalous temperatures today, below average a little bit for most of the country, still remaining above average for the East Coast. Highs today in the East, 60s for Pennsylvania. A week before Thanksgiving is warm. and we see 70s even in the southeast. But cooler today for West Texas. Like I said, they got their first freeze this morning in Lubbock, Texas. I've never seen it this late before. 3 weeks late. That's crazy. That's how warm it's been in Texas. 70s down in southern Arizona, but 40s and 30s for the Pacific Northwest. 40s and 30s for the northern plains, even some 20s up there in the Dakotas. Lows tomorrow morning, starting the day in the single digits, North Dakota, teens and 20s otherwise for the northern plains into the Midwest and even the Ohio Valley, a lot of 20s and 30s. Then 40s, of course, further south, in fact, all the way through Texas and all the way into the Florida Panhandle. And 50s for southern Arizona, 40s and 30s there for Oregon. Except for elevation cooler. Surface for tomorrow, there's your heavy rain, Northern California, Southern Oregon, as our big storm enters the Pacific Northwest. There's your mixture of rain and snow, depending on location for the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley, moving into the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Heavy snow possible, Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia. And we see that cold front moving south towards the northeast. It'll be much cooler as we get into the day on Friday. Highs tomorrow, Thursday, we do see those 40s moving southward into even Tennessee. And let's see, what do we have here? A lot of 40s for the Midwest, even back into like Duluth, Minnesota, but much cooler for the northern plains, 20s here, 20s and 30s. And then warming up in Texas a little bit, we see 70s return and even 60s further north. Here's your 48-hour precipitation, and it's going to be a lot for Northern California, Southern Oregon. The places where it falls as rain could be 6, 7, 8 inches of rain in the next 2 days. The places where it falls as snow, we'll show you here in a second. But still heavy rainfall along the coast of Oregon and Washington as well. Lesser amounts inland. Also heavy rain for New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York State. That bullseye is over 2 inches. And then 1.5 inches or so, inch to 1.5 inches for the rest of those purple areas, and that includes the Great Lakes too. Here's where it falls as snow. So we do see that swath of snow from Green Bay through Milwaukee, sorry about that, and into Chicago, down into Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, up into Pennsylvania, New York. And then that other patch of snow for North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. And then the mountains of the Northwest, just massive snows, 3-4 feet in Northern California. Friday, cold front moving through the southeast, much cooler here. Rain or snow or a mixture from the Ohio Valley up through into the northeast. Our big storm for the Northwest continues with flood possibilities for Northern California and even chance of from freezing rain and snow for Montana and Washington. Friday's temperatures much cooler in the southeast and mid-Atlantic and parts of the East Coast. Sorry about that. And the northern plains getting cooler too, otherwise warming up for much of the west and parts of the Great Lakes. Highs Friday, we see 70s for South Texas, even 80 for McAllen. 80s for Florida, upper 70s for southern Arizona, and then cooling off quite a bit as you head further north, but it'll be warming up a little for the plains into the Midwest as we get towards the weekend. And in fact, here's Saturday, a little bit warmer for parts of the plains into the Midwest. A little bit cooler, though, for the northern plains and upper Midwest. Cooler Great Lakes, cooler east, and west on the cool side, too. But warming up in Texas. Sunday, even warmer for most of Texas except Amarillo as a cold front starts coming down the central plains, cooling things off in the plains. And where I live here in Iowa, be a little bit cooler as we get into Sunday. But Saturday, these are still above average temperatures for us. And we see a lot of 60s in the southeast, and then transitioning to 40s and 30s into the northeast, into the Great Lakes, and then, North Dakota feeling the brunt of the cold. How odd for them with temperatures in the 20s. All right, 8 to 14 days. Much of the country on the cool side as we head into Thanksgiving. This is November 27 through December 3rd. Above average southeast and Florida. And precipitation-wise, southeast and east is our above average, and slightly above average chances for the Rockies. For Thanksgiving, I know you're wondering, not as cold as yesterday's run of the GFS was showing us for the southern plains, for example, or even the southeast, but still seasonably cool for much of the country and a little too warm for parts of Texas. I do apologize for that. We'll see. Lubbock, Texas here in the 70s, Amarillo at 54. So there's a cold front in here somewhere. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And then having done weather in Lubbock, Texas for years, I can tell you those cold fronts can be tricky for these computer models, especially 8 days out. So Lubbock could be cooler than this. We'll take a look. We'll have to wait and see. We're looking at 30s here in Iowa. And will there be snow on the ground here in Iowa? Yeah, maybe. Up to an inch in western Iowa. Greater amounts as you head west into Nebraska. Greater amounts into North Dakota, Minnesota. We see that snow on the ground from lake effect snow off of Superior and Michigan and some of the eastern Great Lakes. But that swath of snow that's fallen over the next couple days from Green Bay through Chicago and into Indiana, we see that's still on the ground. And the Northeast, finally, a white Thanksgiving for parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire. All right, that's your look of weather through the weekend and into Thanksgiving. And as the computer models continue to update and get a better handle on all this stuff, we will continue to keep you advised right here on the Weather Mic. Have a great Wednesday.